Hello, everyone. So to the student joining, so my name is George Ongere, and I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Inquiry, Kenya. I know most of you have met me, and probably most of you are seeing me for the first time. So the Center for Inquiry office is in Nairobi, is located above Cooperative Bank, next to Equity Bank and Safaricom Buruburu. Buruburu, yeah? So that's where we are located, next to Equity Bank, Safaricom. If you're there, then we are just around there. So now, without wasting time, I will introduce our speaker today. Now, our speaker today is called Willie Cartwright, a former Christian. He's a speaker, professor, author, and an advocate. Now, for the last 10 years, he has been speaking, teaching, and writing about nuns. I know if you are meeting that term for the first time, he's going to explain it very well if you are meeting the word nuns. And also, it's been on the forefront in teaching the spread of secularism and its effect on society. And that is what the topic of today's lecture is. So Willie, without wasting a lot of time, I will welcome you.
Well, thank you, George. I appreciate you, George, and Eric, who's not on, but the Center for Inquiry for organizing this. And let's just get right into this. Good afternoon to all of the students. I'm going to share the screen for my PowerPoint presentation, and we will go from there. Let me make sure. That did not share. I'm going to have to do this first. There we go. Now, George, are we good? Can we see the? Okay.
Yes, we are good. We are good.
All right. So as George mentioned, I'm going to introduce a term to you guys called nuns, not nuns that you typically know, N-U-N. This is N-O-N-E-S. But we're also going to talk about secularism and its effects on society. And before we get into that, I just want to give you sort of a brief, an additional bio to who I am, because I think it's important that you know who is speaking to you. So, as George said, my name is Willie Cartwright. I have a MBA and a Master's of Art in Religious Studies. I taught religious studies for 2 years at Georgia State University here in the United States, in Atlanta, Georgia, for those of you who are familiar with the states and Atlanta. I am an author and published 3 books, but one book on this subject entitled "Saved to Sane." It was about my journey away from Christianity and why I think Christianity has been detrimental to the African American community. That book was published in 2020. I've been interviewed by Dan Barker. Those of you who may be familiar with the Freedom from Religious Foundation. I was also a featured presenter at the C.O.R.T conference, which is in Canada. It is on religious trauma. I did a presentation talking about religious trauma. I have also been a presenter at the American Academy of Religion, which is the largest such conference here in the country, in the United States. I also presented at a regional conference. My graduate thesis is about nuns, the prevalence of African American nuns, and the effects on society. That paper was published about a year ago, and it has already been downloaded over 100 times across the world. People are citing the work in it. I've been on numerous podcasts. I've been a speaker at numerous of the events, and most recently, I spoke at the CESPIS conference here in the United States in 2025. So they're just some of the things that I've done over the last few years in this space. So let's begin, because I want us to talk about nuns and understanding what nuns are. So N-O-N-E-S, nuns. Who are they and why are they important? So nuns defined are those individuals who, when answering a public opinion survey about their religion, select atheist, agnostic, or nothing in particular. A few things about this category of none. This is a broad category. Um, I like to look at it like this. I talk about my mother-in-law who is a Christian, but she hasn't been to church in about 15 years. So she would fall into this category on the more conservative side. Um, but the organization, I mean, the this category combines or comprises the religiously unaffiliated, known as nuns. It is also the fastest growing religious group, quote unquote. Most of these individuals still believe in God or some type of higher power. But things that I want to talk about later on in this presentation is how the numbers are misleading when we talk about atheists and agnostics, and how I believe and I posit in my writings that this category is a conduit to secularism, meaning that it is sort of an open door and lead, and it is a doorway for individuals to become less religious and more secular. And then finally, we're going to talk about how religion, God, and church is going to become irrelevant or is becoming irrelevant, and the importance of that. So let me just go back real quickly to nuns. So when we talk about nuns as a broad category, as I mentioned before, it comprises those individuals like my mother-in-law who says, "Well, I'm still a believer, but I haven't been to church." And then the more liberal side of it would be people who are open about being atheists, and it's sort of everything in particular. But from a academic standpoint, this is individuals who, on a survey, when asked, "What is your religious affiliation?" they select agnostic, atheist, or nothing in particular. And that's what I've done a lot of my work on. So let's try to understand the category and who falls into this category. And I think this is important. There's a huge change in religiosity, and it will impact everything in the U.S. culture. Again, this is what I posit in a lot of my writings and my research. The category is obviously complex and problematic. The reason why it is problematic because there are individuals on the religious side who will push back and say, well, within this category of nuns, there are people who are believers. And granted, but again, as we'll see later on, many of those believers, quote unquote, end up becoming non-believers because they're part of this group. And so, what I posit in my writings is that identifying as a nun, aka identifying as not being part of a religious organization or part of organized religion, is the first step in many individuals becoming non-believers or secular. And so you can look at the categories here, and I want to bring your attention to the last two groups here. Those who are millennials, if you look, that group has grown to be about 30%, and this is in the United States. That group has grown to be about 30%. And then the group after that, which I think many of you will fall up under, Gen Z, that group is about 31%. So if you go all the way back to the silent generation, which would be like my grandparents, it was only 10% of individuals who were nothing in particular. And now here we are with Generation Z. That category has grown to about 31%. But if you add that group, 31% of nothing in particular, to the agnostic and atheist group of 17%, then you have a fairly large group. That is about 48% of those of Generation Z who are either agnostic, atheist, or nothing in particular. That is huge. That is huge as we talk about a country or society becoming more secular. Um, but again, almost 70% believe in a God or some force. Is not necessarily the Abrahamic God that many of us know of, but there are people, individuals who believe in things like love is God, quote and unquote, the universe. All of those different things fall up under that category. But I think what is really interesting here is this group right here, which is almost 50% of Generation Z. And even if I go up to millennials, we're looking at 45%. And so, as we can see, we are becoming a more secular nation, a more secular country. And so, in under secularism, I consider people who identify as humanists, free thinkers, atheists, agnostics. people who are just not affiliated with any religious group. And so all of those fall upon, in that category. We're also going to discuss religiosity versus religious identity. Basically, what that means is if I ask you a question, how do you identify? And you say, well, I identify as a Christian, that's your religious identity. But if we talk about if I track you or study you for a week, a month, 6 months, a year, your daily activities present something else. So, meaning that you may say that I am a Christian or I'm a Muslim or one of these other religions that you may identify with. But if I track you and trace you and study you for any period of time, uh, your actions don't reflect what you identify as. Meaning, you probably don't pray, you probably don't read the Bible or the Quran, you probably don't attend religious services. So again, your religiosity is different from what you identify as. And then we're going to talk about how this is regional and local. Um, and then the actual research is basically quantitative data. It is thin, meaning that we need to do more research to get more answers. So let's talk about religiosity in Kenya. And this is taken in 2009. This is what religiosity or religious identity is represented in Kenya. So we can see Protestant independent Christians make up almost 60% of Kenya. Roman Catholic is 23.5%. Muslim, 11%. Traditional beliefs, which we call here in the States, we call this ATR, African traditional religions. And then there's the non-religion, and then there's others. One of the questions that I would throw out to the students, and we can address this after the presentation, is why is there not a larger representation of traditional beliefs in Kenya? I do know that Protestant was first introduced as early as the 1500s, but really didn't take hold in the country until the 1800s in Kenya. Same thing with Roman Catholics and Muslim. But my question is to you, to the students, if any of you have the answer, we can discuss this after the presentation. Is why is there not more traditional African religious or religious practices or spiritual practices that are indigenous to Kenya? Why is that not a larger group? Why is that only 1.7% there? Let me get to the next slide. So Christianity is the dominant religion in Kenya, adhered to by an estimated 85.5% of the total population. Islam is the second largest religion in Kenya, practiced by 10.9% of Kenyans. Other faith practices in Kenya include Baha'i, Buddhism, Hinduism, and then traditional religions. And we talked about that in the last slide as well. So secularism in Kenya. So let's look at the actual breakdown by population. Catholics, 9 million. Protestants, 15 million. Evangelical churches, other evangelical churches, 9.6 million. African instituted churches, 3.2 million. Orthodox, 200,000. Other Christians, 1.7 million. Islam, 5 million. Hindu, 60,000. Traditionalists, 318,000. Other religions. And then here in the red here, non-religion and atheists, 755,000 people. So this is a growing group here. Larger than other religions, larger than traditionalists, larger than Hindu, larger than Orthodox. And then we have this group that say don't know and then not stated. So interesting. So Kenya's most popular religion, again, this is sort of just a pie chart, again, representing Protestant, Catholic. We see atheist group here, Islam, other Christians, AIC. AIC is African Instituted Churches, and then Evangelical Churches, EC. So let's talk about this also. Nothing in particular. this was a standardized, this became a standardized as a category in 2008. There was no other way, it was not measured any other way before 2008. So we didn't have a category called nothing in particular. There has been a steady rise, 3 to 4% of Americans selecting atheist and 4 to 6% selecting agnostic over the last 50 years, an increase to about 12% combined in the last 10 years. I posit in a lot of my writings that this number is really much larger or somewhat larger. And the reason being is because there is a stigma in this country, like I suspect in Kenya, of people who will willing to say that I am a agnostic or an atheist or a non-believer. We prefer to use softer terms like free thinkers or secular humanist or a secularist because there's such again a stigma to saying or admitting that you are an atheist or an agnostic. In particular for the African American community, which I am a part of, I know firsthand how you are ostracized if you admit that you are certainly if you admit that you are an atheist. Um, Agnostic is not quite as bad because people believe that there's still a chance for you to come back and be religious again. But once you say that you are an atheist, many of the people believe that there is no hope for you. I oftentimes joke that, especially in the African American community, you can pretty much do anything that you want to do, and there is forgiveness and there is grace, except saying that you don't believe in some type of God. If in the African American community, if you say that you are an atheist and you don't believe in any type of God, then everyone is pretty much done with you. I've personally experienced that 10 years ago when I became open about my disbelief in the traditional gods that I had grown up in. I grew up as a Christian. My mother was a minister before she passed away. And so I literally lost friends who I had been knowing for 30 and 40 years who said that they would not have anything to do with me anymore because I was not a believer in their mind. So I believe that this number is larger. And as a matter of fact, I know for a fact because there are many people who have contacted me privately once I became open about my disbelief, and they've expressed that they are also non-believers, but they still attend church. They still tell family and friends that they are believers, and they still act as if they are believers because they don't want to be ostracized from society. They don't want to have to deal with the pushback from their family, loved ones, and friends and jobs. Um, but there is hope. If you look, most other Western countries have seen a significant rise in these two categories, the categories being atheist and agnostic. Sweden is now over 50% atheist and agnostic, averaging across many European countries, averaging about 27%. We here in the United States now are about at 28% of those individuals who are falling into the non category. Christianity, which was at one point at about 90% in the history of this country for individuals who identified as Christians, have now fallen to under 40. I mean, it has now fallen to under 50%. So there is growth that's going on. So widespread data in European countries show a consistent numerical progression from agnostic to atheist, with no countries going against the trend. This is important because this goes back to what I said before. Uh, Falling into the non-category is a conduit to those individuals becoming first agnostic and then becoming atheists. And we see this in Europe, in European countries, pretty much throughout all of the countries in Europe. And so again, in layman's terms, what am I saying? Once an individual goes from I am a devout believer, whether it's Muslim, I mean, whether it's Islam or whether it's Christianity or whether it's Judaism, once they go from being a devout believer to falling into the non-category, saying that I am no longer affiliated with any religious group, whether or not at that particular time they still believe in a higher power, there is a greater chance that many of those individuals first become agnostic. So agnostics is sort of dipping your toe into non-belief or free thought, saying, well, I really don't know. And some agnostics say, I don't think that any of us know, or that any of us will ever be able to know if there's a God or not. And then eventually, many of those individuals become or admit to becoming atheists, saying that, okay, I don't believe in any gods or any supernatural beings at the time. Now, there is a difference, and I want to be clear with this. Uh, from my research and my understanding, there are two types of atheists. There are the atheists who say, absolutely, there is no God, there is no supernatural power, I don't believe in anything. And then there are atheists who say, I am not convinced by the evidence, the current evidence, that there is a God, especially a God based on the ones that we know. For full disclosure, I think I fall into the latter category. I don't think that we can, with clear conscience, that we can know um, whether or not for sure or not. But I'm not an agnostic. But what I do is say, and this is sort of a standard line, and this is me being again um, fully disclosing myself. I am not convinced by the current evidence, quote unquote, that any of the known gods actually exist. And that is sort of my standard line. So I consider myself a free thinker, a secular humanist. Um, and so that's where we are. So understand that. I just wanted to make that clear. And then finally, reflection on psychology of individual secularism, willingness to identify as agnostic first, and then over time as atheist, as it reflects cultural, social, cultural psychology and secularism. A society so slowly accepts agnostics and then atheism as a non-stigmatized category. Here in this country, we have a long way before atheism is a non-stigmatized category. We still have laws in some states that a person who is an open atheist cannot hold public office. I think 6 or 7 states here in the U.S. Have laws, state laws on the books, where a open atheist cannot hold a public elected office. We have never had an atheist president, vice president. We do have 1 or 2 um, uh, legislatures, but that is really rare. And so we still have some work to do in that space. African American nuns. Briefly, I think this is important because it shows the growth and what's going on. In 2022, Black Americans' religiosity declined more than any other demographic over the last year. Guys, this is extremely important. For those of you who don't know, African Americans are known as the most devout demographic group in this country. And so we are and have been by far the most religious group in this country. But as of 2022, our religiosity declined more than any other group. And if we look at the chart here, um, and so the blue here represents 2008, and the orange, if you're seeing it as orange, represents the year 2020, right? And so if you look here in 2008, white Americans represented 22% of nuns. Black Americans, African Americans only represented 19%. Hispanics represented 20%, and Asians represented 32, almost 33%. Look at 2020. Whites represent 33% of nuns, but African Americans jumped to almost 35% of nuns. We represent the second largest demographic group within the non category, second only to Asians. And if you can see, Hispanics jumped to 31%, and Asians jumped to about almost 38%. But this is huge here. I call this the sort of reverse canary in the coal mine. What this says to me is that once African Americans become free thinkers, more of us become free thinkers and fall into the non category and start to question and challenge traditional religious thoughts, it is pretty much done for the country as a whole. We are again believed to be the most devout, and once we give up on being as devout, then I think the country as a whole is really headed into into becoming a more secular nation. But as many of you know who follow the news, we are in sort of um, we see a backlash to what's going on here. And so what you see now in this country, without getting really into politics, what you see now in this country with our current president and the things that are going on with evangelicals in this country is a response to this, is a response to what they see as a country who is rapidly growing to becoming more secular, leaving the church, leaving organized religion, asking questions. And so what you see in our politics today is the pushback of that. And so let me just finish out with this slide here. Uh, Among the most religious demographic groups in North America, I mentioned that about African Americans. Recent significant drop in religious identity affiliation. Again, I am old enough. I am a Generation X. I remember as a kid, everybody went to church. Everybody were believers. Everybody confessed that they believed in God. Of most were Christians. That is not the same now. Many African Americans no longer attend church, no longer identify as Christian or Muslim or Jewish or whatever, and are just without a religious affiliation. Again, we're outpacing white Protestant evangelicals, decreased in religious identity as well. And then we outpace every other group as far as the growth is concerned. So that is really eye-opening and important. Um, so as I mentioned before, today about 28% of U.S. adults are religiously unaffiliated, and this is all adults. This is from Generation Z, who are young adults like you guys are, all the way to the silent generation, those who are in their 80s and 90s. So this is a composite. This is from a Pew Research Center poll taken just last year, January of last year of 2024. And so 28% of US adults are religiously unaffiliated, describing themselves as atheists, agnostics, or nothing in particular when asked about their religion. Uh, at the Pew Research Center, they get a lot of questions about this group, often called the nuns. What do nuns believe? Are they opposed to religion? What are their views about science? And is their growth good or bad for society, and why? Some of the questions here. Let me see. Most nuns believe in God or another higher power. We talked about that, but very few go to religious services regularly. Again, that is the doorway to becoming agnostic for many and eventually becoming atheists or free thinkers. Most say religion does some harm, but many also think it does some good. They are not uniformly anti-religious. That's important. So we're not out here, we being free thinkers, those of us in the non-categories, contrary to popular belief, we are not out here attacking religious people or religious groups. What we're trying to do is create a safe space for those of us who are free thinkers, who have questions about our faith, and who may want to move away or practice spirituality in a completely different way. And so we do. Even myself, who is a staunch advocate for secularism and free thought, I will admit that even as a child, that there were some good that I think came out of religion for me. One of the things that I often say is that I believe that there is good in religion, especially when it is a personal practice. The harm becomes when it becomes something that is pushed on individuals who don't practice a particular religion, and we are forced to follow norms and laws imposed upon us by those individuals who are religious, and those norms and beliefs are from those individuals different those individuals specific religion. An example would be those who are in the LGBTQ community. They are forced to abide by laws and rules that are established by those individuals who are of the Abrahamic faiths, which say that being gay or lesbian is an abomination. They're not allowed to marry, at least before they were not, and to raise kids. And so things like that, abortion, which I personally believe it should be left up between the two individuals who conceive, and not a 70-year-old man in the Senate or the House passing laws and rules based on their religions. So let me get off of my soapbox on that. Most nuns reject the idea that science can explain everything, but they express, and I need to hide this, they express more positive views of science than religiously affiliated Americans do. I am a very pro-science person. I believe the science, and so many non-believers and free thinkers do as well, more so than most religious people. So what is religious identity? When is religious identity irrelevant? So first of all, let's define what we mean by irrelevance. Irrelevance is any form of religious identity that has very little implicit impact on daily living, and explicit identity. Explicit identity is likewise not impactful. So again, in layman's terms, what we mean here is that you may, if I ask you a question in the streets and we're talking, and you may say, well, I'm a Christian, or I'm a Muslim, or I'm Jewish. That is how you identify. But again, how you act every day is something different. Again, you may not pray, you may not read the Bible or the Quran, you may not attend religious services. And so eventually, religion becomes irrelevant. Uh, and so, those of us who are in this non category, those of us who are advocates, those of us that do the work in trying to make our country more secular and continue the separation of church and state, I think that it is a more conceivable effort if we can get most religious people to the point where their religion is irrelevant, right? Meaning that, yes, yeah, I'm a believer, but I'm not so devout in my belief that I want to pass laws and have norms that prohibit or discriminate against those individuals who are not religious. And so I say to those of us, to those people I talk to that are working out here with me, that if we can get believers to the point where their religion is irrelevant, then that becomes huge. That becomes huge. Because what we do is we're not telling them, or we're not saying that we don't want you to be a believer in what you believe in. But what we are saying is that that's fine. Just don't force the rest of us to follow the rules and laws based on your religion. Just a second. Let me get a sip of water here. Sorry about that. And so that's what we mean by when is religious identity irrelevant. So how you identify is irrelevant to how you act. And so because of that, that is what we hope to get most religious people to. If not being done, if they're going to continue to be religious, we at least want them to get it to the point where their religion is irrelevant. So religious identity irrelevance. We use quantitative data, which means that we did basically studies and spoke with people using quantitative data to see the complexity of nuns from explicit labeled identity versus irrelevance, or either explicit or implicit identity. And we've talked about this enough. Survey data is self-reported and thus largely resulting in explicit religious identity, meaning that we are relying on the individuals to self-report how they identify. And so there are low implicit religious identity individuals, also nuns. The question is, are low implicit religious identity individuals also nuns? And so I think the answer to that would be yes, they would probably fall into this category as well. Um, the goal is to complicate nuns by seeing how religious identity irrelevance may exist in individuals who may still readily identify with a religious identity. So let me sort of break this down. So all we're saying is that, okay, again, you are telling us that you are a believer, that you are a Christian, or you're a Muslim, or you're Jewish, but yet, I see you every day and I don't see you praying. I don't see you attending church services. I don't see you reading the Quran or your Bible. I don't hear you othering or speaking about Jesus or God or Allah, any of that. I don't see you saying grace over your food. So you're telling me one thing, but in your actions, you're actually doing something else. And that's all that that means. Thus, this may also help explain the gradual ways in which people more directionally move directionally from implicit identity irrelevance to agnosticism and atheism, or maybe not. And so, again, what I've been saying is that those individuals who go from I am a devout in my religious beliefs to now I am part of this non-category where I'm not part of any religious organization. Eventually, some of those people eventually move into uh, becoming agnostic, eventually to atheism, or at the least, it becomes irrelevant. Their religion becomes irrelevant to the way they do things and the way that they see things. And what I see with a lot of Generation Z is this sort of irrelevance here. And what do I mean by that? They will tell you, yeah, I believe. And a lot of times they believe because their parents are religious. They grew up in a religious household. They're in a community of believers. However, they don't pray a lot. They don't read the Bible or the Quran. They don't attend church services. And at times they may be sort of turned off by organized religion because of what organized religion says about many of their friends who may be gay or lesbian, or who may want to practice a different type of spirituality. They also see hypocrisy, especially here in the States, with many religious people who refuse to do simple things, things that you would think religious people would do, like feed the hungry, look out for those who are in need, those type things. They also see many um, clergy members who are greedy, who are living a life above what many of their parishioners are. And so all of these things come into play, especially with the younger generations who are seeing this and are not too indoctrinated into religion to where they overlook these things. And so I think that that is a great thing. And so finally, why is all of this important? Quote and unquote, I've heard and I've seen people say that secularism creates an unstable societies. And so we're going to talk about that next. Does secularism create unstable societies? So let's look at some stats. I am in academia, was in academia, and so I am big on facts and stats and research. So let's take a look. Here are the most secular countries, and this is from 2017, a Win Gallup research poll. So China, 90% secular. Sweden, 73% secular. Czech Republic is 72. The UK is 69% secular. Belgium, Azerbaijan, 64%. Belgium, 64%. Let's see. Australia, 63%. Norway, 62%, and Denmark. And so you guys can see, and I will, let me go back. I'm sorry. I want to point out a couple of things. And so we missed Vietnam, which is 63%. So I want to point out a few things. Um, there are countries on here that have very well functioning societies. They have very little crime. They have a high standard and quality of life, and yet they are very secular. In particular, I'm speaking about Sweden, the UK, Norway, and Denmark. Off the top of my head, I know for a fact that these are very extremely stable countries. Um, so the next chart is going to show us, and here are the most religious countries. This is from 2024. Somalia. You guys are over in that part of the world, so you guys know what's going on in Somalia. Niger, Bangladesh, Ethiopia, Yemen, Malawi, Indonesia, uh, Sri Lanka, uh, Mauritania, and I probably pronounced that wrong. And then this last country, um, Not sure how to pronounce that, so I don't want to butcher that. But all of these countries are at least 98% religious, and many of these countries are has a very low quality of life. They have a lot of things, a lot of negative things going on in the country: war, famine, starvation, corrupt political systems, all of that. The United States ranks 104 as the most as far as most religious countries, and Kenya, you guys rank 44th as the most religious. You're the 44th most religious country in the world. I thought that was interesting. So let's talk about quality of life. And so the quality of life, this category entails pretty much everything, everything from infant mortality to longevity, um, peace, uh, uh, GDP, jobs, everything goes into the quality of life. And so let's look again at some of these countries who are less secular but enjoy a higher quality of life. The Netherlands is number two. We know that they are a secular nation, a mostly secular nation. They enjoy a higher quality of life. Denmark is number three. They also enjoy a high quality of life and are a more secular country. Switzerland at five as well. Finland, Iceland, and Norway, all four of these countries, five, six, seven, and eight, are more secularist countries and enjoy a high quality of life, as we can see here on the chart. Sweden is another. Um, I think New Zealand and Australia are not as religious. The United States comes in at number 15 for quality of life, so it's sort of a misnomer. We are, well, I guess it sort of fits. We are 104 as far as a religious country, but we're 15th in quality of life. A lot of that has to do with our GDP. We have the largest economy in the world. And so, but you would get individuals who will argue with you in this country that a lot of us don't enjoy a high quality of life. But that is subjective and relative and contextual to other countries in the world. So, does Kenya have a good quality of life? While some areas of Kenya have high standards of living, others face significant challenges with poverty, healthcare, and education. And then, according to the Human Development Index, Kenya ranks 147 out of 189 countries in terms of overall quality of life. Again, I am not an expert. And again, this is there are objective factors within this, but some of this is also subjective. And so I will leave that there, but I just wanted to add that as a context there. And so, what is the future of secularism? So, what is the political? Let's begin. What is the political future of secularism? Well, here in this country, what we're seeing is, I believe, the last fight for those individuals who want us to become or go or in their mind want us to become a theocracy. We are already, in my opinion, a soft theocracy, meaning that many of our laws and our norms are religious from a religious context. You hear a lot in this country, and those of you who are outside the country may have heard that there's sort of this great debate as to whether or not we truly have separation of church and state in this country. Were we intended to be a country, a Christian nation? I have a completely whole different presentation on that. Um, but to sum it up, we were not founded as a Christian nation. Many of our founders were not believers. You had some who were indeed theists, but then you had some who were deists. And those of you who don't know the difference between theists and deists, a theist, those individuals like we see today who are believers in a deity or a God and believe that that deity or that God affects every aspect of their life on a daily basis. A deist, on the other hand, believes that there was some supernatural being that created everything and then left us alone. And then you have those who are theists. You have those who are atheists. And so our founding fathers were, you had some theists, you had some deists, and you had some truly free thinkers. Our Constitution specifically says separation of church and state. And so I think we will eventually, hopefully in my lifetime, before I'm gone off this planet, we'll see a complete separation of church and state, and where the church will not wield the kind of political power that it has right now, and influence on our society. Um, I think so. I think that's where we are politically, socially. Again, I think this one of those things we have to work to make free thought, secularism, a more socially acceptable lifestyle. I tell people all the time, before you knew that I was a non-believer, um, you treated me one way. We were friends. You respected me. Nothing has changed now that I am a non-believer. And so we have to work and create spaces where being a non-believer, a free thinker, a humanist is socially acceptable, especially in this country and certainly in other African nations, in Kenya as well. Culturally, sort of the same thing. Um, we have to get to a point where everything, at least in this country, is not centered around your faith and your belief. And it's not like that throughout the entire. It varies depending on where you live in this country. Those of you who are familiar with the United States, I grew up in what we call the southeastern part of the United States, which is very, very religious. It is called the Bible Belt. It is extremely conservative and extremely religious. And so everything's centered around your religion and your faith. I've recently, as of about 9 months ago, moved to the western part of the United States, where they are a lot more liberal. They are not as religious. I see a lot less churches out here where I am now, which I think is a great thing. Um, we're pushing, we're working to again make free thought, um, free thinkers, secularist humanists, more accepted in our culture. And then spiritually, one of the questions that I often get when I engage in debates and do speaking engagements, when we talk about what happens if the church is no longer existing, or the church is no longer the center of the community, especially in the African American community? What happens to an individual and their spirituality? And so one of the things I say is that we all are free to practice spirituality any way that we see fit. We don't necessarily need a church for that. There is a social element to religion and spirituality, that there are other entities in our society that can fill that void. But spirituality to me is up to the individual. There is, for some people, there is a clear separation between spirituality and religion. My wife is one. My wife is not religious at all. She considers herself spiritual, but is on a much, much, much deeper level. And so we have really interesting conversations about that. And so that's where we are. And so for those of you in Kenya, these are 4 areas that you can think about. What's the future of free thought and secularism for you guys in Kenya? Whether it's in your politics, the social realm, culturally or spiritually. And so I think there's something that we all can think about and hope and wish for in the future, that things improve from that standpoint. Before we get to the questions and answers, I just want to identify some books for those of you who want to read more on the subject of secularism, free thought, free thinkers, and humanists. Just a few books here. First one is American Secularism: Cultural Contours of Non-Religious Belief Systems. This is by Joseph Baker and Buster Smith. All of these books that I'm recommending to you all, I have actually read all of them, done research, cited many of these books as well. Joseph Blankholm, who is a professor at a school out west, who I've actually had the privilege of speaking with, talking to, has a book called The Secular Paradox, on the religiosity of the not religious. This is a fantastic book if you want to understand who and what makes up the category of nuns. This is an awesome book. He talks about all of the nuns and those individuals in the category. Ryan Berg, who is another professor, you can follow him on Twitter. Berg, he writes about Black Americans see the biggest shift away from faith. This is an article in Christian Today. You can look that up. Christian Today, February 15th. He does a great job. He uses a lot of stats. And I think one of the slides I had stats, and it actually may have come from the work of Ryan. So, and then Ryan also wrote The Nuns, Where They Come From, Who They Are. Again, another excellent book that I read and cited often in a lot of my writings. And Where Are They Going? So again, he does a comprehensive job of identifying who are nuns, where they are, and where they are going. Christopher Cameron is an African American professor here in the southeast part of the country. His book is on free thinkers, a history of African American secularism. Truly enjoyed his books. His book talks about the history of Black free thinkers, beginning all the way back to Frederick Douglass, who was a Christian, but he challenged the normative thought process of belief in this country for Christians, all the way back into the 1800s, all the way up to the future, all the way up to the present, I should say. So that's a great book. He's a professor. Jose Casanova's Secularization, an International Encyclopedia of the Social and Behavioral Science, another great work. Dr. Anthony Penn, who again I had the privilege of meeting. He is a self-described secular humanist. He speaks and talk about humanism, and also he talks about humanism as a replacement for Christianity in the African American community. He is a African American professor at one of the universities here in the United States. And then finally, Jonathan S. Cohn and Vincent Lloyd wrote a book called Race and Secularism in America. Again, another excellent book. This one right here is more of a heavier read. It is a little bit more complex than some of the other books, but again, it is fantastic information, awesome information in there. And so I just wanted to leave you guys with something if you wanted to do more reading, more research into nuns. And although most of this stuff, most of the work here is about secularism and free thought in the United States, this also can be applicable to other countries, including Kenya, the growth of the nun category, what to expect, how to deal with it, how to embrace it, how to share it, all of that. Not saying that we have the blueprint in these countries. We certainly do not. There are other countries, especially European countries, who are further along than us. But I think that the work here can help those countries who may be a little bit more behind in the spread of free thought than what we are here in the United States. And so I think this work will certainly help those individuals. And then finally, answers and questions. Questions, answers, and discussions. We've been going about a little over 50 minutes, so I'm going to end the slideshow here, and we can take questions. Let me end it here. Go here. All right, George, are you there?
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, so I think now we are going to the question and answer. So I can see there are 9 questions.
Okay, good deal.
Yeah. So and let me start with one at the chat. Someone is asking. Start with this one. Someone is asking, what makes a person secular? It's called Ismail. What makes a person secular? Like what makes a person to be considered secular?
Awesome question. I think a person is considered secular when there is a separation in their daily activities from their religion, if they are religious, or for an individual who may not be religious, who live their life as I do, without the consideration of religion and a deity or God or a belief system. So I am secular because I get up every single day and I live my life without the thought or wondering or worried about, or the input of religion, a God, or a deity. So I think that you can be a believer in a higher power, but still be secular in your everyday activities. And I know many people who believe that. I mean, who are like that. Again, if you ask them if they believe in a higher power, they will say yes. But they go about their everyday life as if that higher power has no effect on their daily life. And those would be in what I would define as um, spiritual secularists, and then there's people like me who are just secularists, because I don't believe in any God or deity, and I live my life as such.
Good. So we are going to the questions. Now, let's start with Rotich Alfred Kipruya. So he asked, how do religious nuns navigate major life events like marriage, death, and holiday, which often have religious traditions?
That is a fantastic question, and I think all of us navigate it differently. Let me tell you. So for me, I am part of organizations where, especially African American organizations, where it's been our tradition that we begin every meeting with a prayer, we end with a prayer. My family, my sister still says grace over her food. Uh, if I attend weddings, clearly most of them are in a church. There is religious context to it. I am respectful in that sense because I come from that, right? I spent 40 years as a Christian. And so, A, I'm respectful to all of that. B, it doesn't bother me. And so I show respect. If they're saying a prayer, I may still bow my head. Um, if they're saying grace, I will again bow my head. But I try to keep it respectful. I There was a time when I first became a non-believer that I was more antagonistic, if you said so, where I would challenge. But now I'm at a point where, for me, it's all about teaching and creating a safe space, and doing the research and helping all of us to live together in this thing. And so, for me personally, I'm respectful to it. I understand it. Um, I try to avoid those situations as much as possible, but if I cannot avoid them, then I'm just respectful. I will attend a friend's marriage at a church; doesn't bother me at all. I'm still part of organizations and groups who begin their meetings with prayer. I simply bow my head. I'm part of a fraternity who does that at every meeting. I just did a meeting last Friday where they did a prayer, and I just I had my head down and thought about whatever. So there's ways, and I think people handle it differently. I know there are people who are non-believers and free thinkers who avoid those situations altogether. Um, I think most of us, because we grew up we're part of a society that is heavily influenced by religion. We know that that's coming, and so to avoid incident and to avoid arguments and fights with loved ones, we sort of sit back and say, okay, that's them. It's not. It's no. How long does a prayer last? How long does grace last? I haven't been inside a church for a church service in about 8 years. Um, and so I'm good with that, and I don't attend church. I don't engage in a lot of conversations with believers. If I think it's going to become antagonistic. My sister and I just spoke to her yesterday, and we laughed about how we don't talk about religion. My sister is a devout Christian. Her kids, my niece and nephew, they will call me and ask me religious questions because they can't ask her because she's so devout. But we just don't. So we just don't talk about it. So yeah. So people handle it differently. Me personally, I'm good with it. It doesn't bother me.
The next question comes from Zedek Musila. So, what guides morality in secularism? Because I think we cannot pressure that human beings are rational. To an extent, society is guided by morals derived from religion. If that's the case, what guides morality in secularism? So that's from Zedek Musila.
Okay. Another great question. I think we make the mistake of believing that we get our humanity gets their morality from religion. That is not true. Um, let's just go back through the evolution of humanity. Humans, the modern man is about 200 to 250,000 years old. The oldest that we can trace religion is back. It's about 10,000 years old, right? It's about 10,000. So humanity understood morality from the standpoint of survival of the whole. So what we understood 200,000 years ago was that if I mistreat my neighbor, if I kill my neighbor, then it is going to make things harder for us as the collective to survive against our natural enemies. And so morality started to evolve from the process of us wanting to survive. And so we realized that our collective survival meant that all of us, the more of us it was, the happier we were with each other, the better our chances to collectively survive. And so morality did not come from religion. Secondly, if you read the Quran or the Bible, especially in the Bible, especially the Old Testament, there are a multitude of atrocities and a multitude of immoralities that are in the Bible that the Bible condones, commits, or rewards, to include the misogyny of women, uh, um, slavery, murder, genocide. And so all of that is in sacred holy texts, including the Quran and the Bible. So we just have to, when we bring up that topic, we have to understand the evolution of humanity and that morality. Humanity did not get morality, contrary to popular belief, that we did not get our morality uh, from religion.
Okay, thanks for that. So the next question comes from Nuzla Abdullahim. As an atheist who lost some of your loved ones due to disbelief, what are some of the ways you have used to ensure no discriminations are conveyed to the other atheists? You got that?
No, I didn't get it. You said, could you repeat it?
So we are in Q&A. You can just look. I'm reading Nuzla Abdullahim. Just Q&A. So as an atheist who lost some of your loved ones due to disbelief, what are some of the ways you have used to ensure that no discrimination are conveyed to other atheists?
Okay, I can see the question. Okay, as an atheist who lost some of your loved ones due to disbelief, what are some of the ways you have used to ensure no discriminations are conveyed to the other atheists? As atheists who have lost some of your loved ones due to disbelief, what are some of the ways that you have used to ensure no discrimination are conveyed to other? Okay, yeah, I get what you're saying now. So it is an ongoing process, right? I don't. Part of why I do what I do is so that other people don't experience what I've experienced. I think for my generation, Generation X, it is a pretty much a foregone conclusion. Uh, my peers, the people I grew up with, have been indoctrinated in the religion, and their opinions are not going to change. What I hope, though, for younger people is that they are more open to different thoughts. And so, what I try to do for those younger non-believers is try to help them to um, peacefully speak about their disbelief to their friends who may be believers. And I'm finding that many of their friends are a lot more open than what my friends were. And so we can create this dialogue and help them understand that we're really, there's really not much difference between us other than what we choose to believe or not believe. Uh, there was a famous atheist who said that everybody is an atheist with the exception of just one God, right? So as humanity, we've created about 10,000 different gods. Many of you are atheists to 9,999 of those gods, right? And so, and so that's just sort of how we look at it. So I guess to sort of wrap it up, there is not a lot of hope, I don't think, for people who are my age and older, but for those who are younger, and we can continue to create these environments, have these discussions, and become more open, that we are free thinkers, secular, atheists, whatever we define ourselves, and have that become more of the norm in our society, then it'd be a lot easier for other atheists, especially younger ones, to not be discriminated against.
Good. So we're going to Viola. You can just look at the Q&A so that when I read you can look at what I'm reading. Huh? So what is your day like? What is your day like or life like now that you renounce your religion? Let me read it. What is your day like or life like now that you renounce your religion? Who do you call on in times of distress? Who do you call in times of distress? Huh? For instance, at such a time, for instance, such a time we as Christians, we turn to God.
Yeah. Another excellent question. And so we understand that part of religion, part of the religious experience is having something bigger than you to go to in times of distress, or times of need, or times to get you through something. What we also understand is that that thing does not have to be a god or a deity. And so my day is like any other day. I get up, I do the things that I need to do. I do my research, I do my writings, and I live life pretty much like all of you do. Um, but when there's a distressful time, how do I handle it? Pretty, there people deal with things, have their way of dealing with things. Personally, I'm a person who enjoys nature. So I hike, I walk, I work out. That relieves stress. I read, and so there are a multitude of ways that we deal with it. Um, and so remember this: all we're doing, even when we call it on God, is that we are believing that calling on God or whatever it is that we do is providing us with some comfort or distracting us from the things that are going on. Even calling on God doesn't necessarily change what happens or what has happened or what's going to happen. It's just a way to sort of help us through this process. So, for example, 2 years after becoming public about my non-belief, my mother died, and so my mother and I were really, really close. And so, if she had died 3 or 4 years earlier, of course, I would have relied on my faith and my belief to sort of get me through it. But I didn't have that, right? Because I had denounced my religion. And so I just relied on people around me. I relied on the fact that I know that death is part of life and is part of a process. I relied on the fact that my mother had suffered, physically suffered for many, many years, and that her physical body, there was no more suffering there. And then I did the practical things that I did, read, spent time in nature, spent time by myself, just thinking, and so all of that. And so yeah, so that's how I deal with it, and I think that's how other people deal with it. Some people may deal with it in a more destructive ways, like maybe gambling or drinking or smoking or those type things. But there are even believers who do those things to sort of cope with things. I know believers, Christians and Muslims, who would turn to destructive behaviors to deal with distress, even though they profess a belief in a higher power. So yeah, but that's a great question.
So the next question is from Odivan. So is atheism is true and humans are just the result of random evolutionary processes? What ultimate reason do we have to value human life over other animals or even objects?
So let's see. If atheism is true and humans are just the result of random evolutionary process, What ultimate reasons do we have to value human life over other animals or even objects? So first of all, me personally, I don't think that atheism is a thing. Remember, a, being an atheist is simply saying I don't believe in what we as human beings call a god or a deity. Period. There is nothing else to it. Just that. So atheism, and I'm not saying this is what you're saying, but there are believers who like to equate atheism to a religion, and it is not. It is simply. It is like it's like saying a person who doesn't a person who collects coins. What do you define? Who do you call the person that don't collect coins? Nothing. They just don't collect coins. So those of you who are believers, what do you call people who don't believe? We just don't believe. So that's the first thing that I would like to make clear. And then the second thing is that random evolutionary process that is not really proper, right? And so when we talk about these things, um, evolution, Big Bang, and natural selection is not a necessarily a random process, right? It is also what we would say is the most plausible explanation for our existence. We're not saying that it is the answer, that is the 100% answer. It is at this point based on all of the evidence that we have before us. It is the most plausible explanation for our existence. And so now you say, what the ultimate reason do you have to value human life over other animals or even objects? It's called humanity. It's called empathy. It's called sympathy, right? I don't need the fear of going to hell, or I don't need a religious doctrine or paper or a deity or a God to tell me how I should treat another human being. It is in me because I am human. I do not want to see another human being suffer if I can help it. And so that is empathy. That is humanity. That is part of what humanism is, and we've evolved with that through our evolution, at least modern man, from 200 to 250,000 years ago. Again, going back to what I said earlier, I think the first question is as evolving humans 200,000 years ago, we understood that it was to our personal benefit and the benefit of the collective if we treated each other well and looked out for each other. And so that evolved into a sense of empathy and a sense of humanity that we have toward each other. Not only that, but toward animals as well. As my wife would say, who sort of practices Buddhist philosophies, uh, every sentient being she believes has emotions and feelings, and so including animals, and so we treat them as such. And so again, I don't need a religion or a deity or a God to tell me that I should treat other living beings with respect and empathy and humanity.
So I think the best is we read it with you. So that on my side, I read it, then you look at it. So we are
Yeah.
on. Many atheists rely on science, but science can't explain everything, like consciousness, origin of the universe. How do atheists address these gaps?
That is a great question. So let's do this how I normally would do this. We have a debate with someone. Um, Science tells us that what we have today is based on the evidence, and so it is the most plausible. That word is important. The most plausible explanation for the things that we know, right? It is all right for a non-believer. This is one of the ways that believers and non-believers are different. We as non-believers, free thinkers, humanists, it is all right for us to say, "I don't know." Right? 100 years ago, we didn't know what caused thunder, lightning, rain, those type things 100, 200 years ago, or even further back. And so what we did was we created gods as an explanation to fill those gaps. We call that God of the gaps. And so that's how we got Thor, and that's how we got Apollo, and that's how we got Zeus. But as science told us or taught us how we got lightning and earthquakes and rain, those gods went by the wayside. And so, what we're doing now as a collective society throughout the world is that we're still inputting God in the gaps for the things that we don't know. We will eventually, at some point in our existence, know the answer to most of these questions. And the answer, in my belief, the answer will not be God or a deity. And so there are things that non-believers cannot explain, and we are all right with not knowing that. But understand this: because we don't know the answer or we can't explain it, that is not evidence for the existence of a God. Because what you have not done is proven that a God or a deity exists, B, that your God or your deity exists, and C, that your God and your deity is responsible for the things that we don't know or that we cannot explain. How has the rise of secularism
Yes.
impacted global politics and social structures? Um,
Structure. Yes.
I think that the rise of secularism has had more effect on social structures than global politics. Um, what we see with global politics, and let's take Gaza and that situation for example. Uh, those of us who understand history, and especially religious history, know that there is a undergirding of religion that is impacting the situation in Gaza. But those of us who also know history also know that it's really about power and greed and money. And so what I believe is that secularism is not going to have a huge impact on uh, geopolitical things for the most part, because those things are really driven by greed and money. And religion is used to sort of get the mass of people on board, right? But it's really about greed and power. But from a social aspect, from the social, let me go back to the question. I miss it? Uh, where did we go? We went up. Okay, I'm sorry. From the social aspect, I think it has more of an influence. So social things, cultural things is where I think you will see the change. For example, in the Middle East, um, as we if we are able to become a more secular society, then you're going to see countries who have historically, traditionally marginalized women. You're going to see that begin to change. Um, as we become a more secular society. You're going to see countries who are adamantly against the LGBT community and gay marriage and gay relationships and lesbian relationships. You're going to see those things sort of change. And so I think secularism will affect social and cultural issues more so than our geopolitical issues, because one side, the social cultural things are really based largely on traditional religious beliefs, while the other side, the geopolitical stuff, is really based on greed and power. So yeah. So George, I found it.
Can you?
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Just read the next.
Okay, the next one is from Stacy. Uh, for people who identify as nuns, how do they raise their children as far as religious systems are concerned? Great question, Stacy. So, Stacy, I have a friend, a good friend of mine. Her and her husband, they are both uh, um, open atheists. They're African American atheists, and they live in the southwest part of the U.S., which is very conservative, very religious, and they live in a very devout and religious community. And so what they do, and they have 4 kids. And so what they do is they've allowed their children to sort of explore, sort of read, sort of take in everything, and let them allow them to make their own decisions. Um, they themselves, as parents, don't attend religious services or church or synagogue or whatever. Um, but they do allow their children to decide what they want to do. And I think, and so me personally, I don't have any kids. I do have a niece and a nephew who are millennial and generation Z, like you guys are, like many of you guys are, and they've called me, and what I've said to them, even though they have spent most of their lives in a church, they don't go to church often now. But what I tell them is that to read everything that they can read about whatever, all religions, all spiritual practices, and all of that, and then decide what's best for them. They may decide that Christianity is best, Islam is best, Judaism is best, Hinduism is best, Taoism is best, Buddhism is best, or they may decide that they just want to be spiritual, so to create their own beliefs, or they may decide that they don't want to be part of any religious or spiritual practice whatsoever. And so I think that that should be left up to them. I didn't have that option when I was a child. I was made and forced to go to church all the time. Christianity was major in my house. And so I didn't have that option. And I think that young people should have that option. So, and I think, Stacey, it also depends on the parents. I knew these parents personally because they are friends of mine, and we've had these discussions. But I think other parents may do it differently. I do know parents who are nuns who will send their kids to church or to synagogue or to a mosque. I do know nuns who have their children in religious schools. And so it just depends, and it varies depending on the person. Next question.
So the
Can
next,
I?
it's not a question, eh? So I
Okay.
think how we are going to do this, is after the session, for those who want to reach out to you, uh, I'll be I'll be I'll be in, I'll be in contact with you. Is that okay?
Huh? Yes, absolutely. Please do that. Yes, yes,
Yes. So for
yes.
those who are interested in the speaker afterwards, you just give me a chat message from WhatsApp, and then we'll see how we do that. So we go
Yep,
to Stacy Maina.
yep. Stacy says, how do nuns navigate personal relationships with people who have strong religious beliefs? Again, it depends on the person. Let me speak for myself. Um, we navigated every way from not discussing anything religious to making jokes about it and everything in between. So what do I mean by that? My sister and I, we don't talk about it because she know where I stand. She follow me on social media where I do a lot of posting about religion, and we just don't talk about it. I have other friends who are really religious who make jokes about my non-belief. It doesn't bother me. I don't really get upset with it. And then in between, I engage in really strenuous and deep debate and dialogue with individuals. So I'm open and I am broad in my response to individuals and how I navigate my personal relationships with people. I tend to be more respectful to my older, like my people in my mother's generation. Like I have aunts and my mother-in-law and uncles who are devoutly religious. I don't engage with them. I am very respectful to them and their religious beliefs. I understand why they believe. I understand that they're never going to change, and I am good with that. I am, as a matter of fact, I probably wouldn't want them to change, and so I'm very respectful of that. And then one last thing, my personal mentor, who I love dearly, is a minister. He is one of the absolute best human beings I have ever met in my life. He understands my position. We haven't really we don't really discuss it, but there's a mutual respect there. He's a pastor. He runs a church, and so. But I admire him as a human being. I admire him as a man, and that doesn't change because he is religious. And I think and I believe that he feels the same about me. and it doesn't change because I am no longer religion. We still have that mutual respect and profound love for each other. So yeah, so that's a great question, Stacy. Next question,
So, so
yes.
the next question, if you tackle it, can you also input the current United States situation where Trump is saying that we only have two genders? So as you read that, you also try to tackle that.
Okay, but that's Isaac, right? Okay, so Isaac said
Yes.
relationship between atheism and LGBTQ. I think atheism comes with associated decline in morality in society by the rise of LGBTQ. Validate my point on this matter. You want me to validate that? So let's so let's understand this again. Going back to my previous comment about atheism, as you guys like to say, there is only one issue that people who are atheists or non-believers agree on, and that is that we don't believe in a God or a deity. Period. So you have atheists who are anti-LGBTQ. You have atheists or non-believers who are pro-LGBTQ. One really doesn't have anything to do with the other. There are non-believers who are extremely conservative. There are non-believers and atheists who are extremely liberal. And so what we've shown in part of the presentation, we've shown that secularism is not associated with a decline in morality. And if you remember the slides, and we also talked about how the more religious countries are more immoral from the standpoint of wars and quality of life and how they treat each other. So I think it is a misnomer to associate a decline in morality with the rise of atheism or secularism. And so let me give you another issue here. When this country was about 90% believers, when 99 out of 10 people in this country said that they believed in God, if you go back 50, 60, 100, 200 years ago, we were a extremely immoral country. Why? Because we had slavery, we had Jim Crow, we had lynchings, we had beatings. We treated everybody who was not a white heterosexual male, we oppressed that group. When this country was 90% Christian, we oppressed Asians. We oppressed LGBTQ individuals. We oppressed African Americans. We engaged again in slavery, lynchings, murders. Those Christians fed black babies to alligators. And so we were a much more immoral country when 90% of us said that we were Christians. If you're familiar with the Ku Klux Klan here in the United States, which is an infamous segregation organization that did lynchings and killed and murdered and raped African Americans among others, they are a they are a Christian organization. In their bylaws, you have to be a Christian to be part of the Ku Klux Klan. And so I adamantly push back on the thought that atheism is associated with the decline of morality. And so, Isaac, I cannot validate your point on that. And so, yeah. And so, what you're saying is that you're taking one issue, the issue of LGBTQ, and you are associating that with a decline in morality because you simply disagree with their lifestyle. I am not gay. I am heterosexual 100%, but I have friends who are part of the LGBTQ community, and they are some of the best people that I know. I have no issues with who decides of a person deciding on who they want to love, and I think that should not be an issue for any of us. And I think they deserve to have the same rights that I have as a heterosexual male. Next question.
Yes.
Ruth, let's see.
Ruth, yes.
And I'm trying to move the questions down. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Ruth, do you
Ruth,
think
yes.
do you think more countries will become secular in the future, or will religion continue to play a strong role in governance? Ruth, I think a move to secularism is part of the natural progression in humanity, right? Because and here's why: because many of the practices that we get from religion is archaic, it is oppressive, and it is suppressive. And if we are a evolving race of people, we eventually get to the point where we realize that marginalizing women, oppressing those individuals who are not Christian or heterosexual or white or whatever, that is a problem. If you look through our history as evolving human beings, we've evolved from archaic practices. We used to sacrifice humans, we used to sacrifice animals, and we realized that that was a barbaric and archaic practice, and we left that alone. Um, we used to oppress and suppress women to a much greater role than what we do now. And we realized that a lot of those practices were archaic, and so we left those alone. And so I think that many countries eventually will become more secular. And we see that here in this country. We see that in many of the European countries. We even see that in some of the African countries that were really, really staunch, especially the Muslim countries who were really, really staunch in their practice. We're seeing them starting to loosen up a little bit on what they feel about the LGBT community. We even see that in some Muslim communities, in some Muslim countries. Again, not to the extent that we want to, but we do see some changing. So Ruth, yes, I do think eventually we will move to a more secular society worldwide. I personally think that there will always be religious people in the world. I think there will always be countries and societies that are more religious than others. But I do think that we will start to see more countries who are going to become more secular because that's just the way it's going. With the advent of the internet, people being able to view and see each other all over the world, people who have been able to voice their displeasure and disapproval of how others are treated, it is going to happen. Yes. Um, so yeah, Ruth, thank you for that question. Next question.
Is
This is
from Henry Ochieng.
Henry.
I don't know whether you can answer that. Can you just read it?
Does listening to secular music or even dancing to secular tones interfere with my Christian life? Or rather, it is considered sinful, especially when I'm a faithful believer in God and also saved? Henry, that is a question for you to decide. But let me tell you, when I was a believer, and many of my friends, we did listen to secular music. I grew up in the era of a time when gangster rap had just become popular in the early 1990s. I grew up in the 70s and 80s, but I was in my early 20s when a gangster rap came about. Um, but I also knew other people like my mother who would not listen to secular music at all, even though she grew up in the 60s and the 70s, where she even owned a nightclub when she was younger. So yeah, so that all depends on you. Here's the beauty of me being a free thinker and a secularist. I don't pass judgment on anybody religious practices from the standpoint of what you do. Um, I don't. It is not my position. I just want you to be happy in whatever it is that you do. Um, Personally, I think it's a little bit overboard for people not to be able to listen to different types of music, but that's just me. And so you as a believer probably should not be listening to me as a non-believer. so um, so the next question.
Yeah.
Let's see. What made you denounce your religion? Oh, great question. Great question. So I'm going to give you the short version of it. So as a kid, and I talked about this as a kid, I was made to go to church. I was made to go to revival. Everything was about religion in my household. I couldn't miss church and I couldn't miss school. But I had questions about logical stuff that didn't make sense to me, and I wasn't allowed to ask those questions. When I got to college, I met individuals who were still religious, but they were part of other practices. Like as a kid, I didn't know anybody who was a Muslim or a 5%er or Hindu or Taoism or Buddhist, none of that. Everybody I knew was Christian, and I knew one Catholic. So when I got to college, I became interested in these other different religions, almost converted to Islam. But then as I continued as I progressed in my adulthood, it just kept bothering me that I had these questions. And it was just too many things that didn't make sense. Um, I'm a scholar by nature. As I started to do more reading and more research, the science didn't match the religion. And then I started to see a lot of harm that religion was causing people. And the foundation of religion just did not make sense to me. How could a loving God create a hell and have people go to hell knowing that he created these individuals, knowing what they were going to do or be? So all of that stuff just didn't make sense. And in 2015, my wife, who was born into the Muslim faith, she has a Muslim name, but she converted to Christianity when she was 20. We got married, she was 29. So what would have been 10 years after meeting her and 9 years of being married, we both literally at the same time looked at each other while we were on a hike and said, this religion thing is not working for us. And we both made a pact at that point that we would go on separate spiritual journeys. My wife ended up embracing Buddhism because it fits her and her personality. I have not and will not embrace any organized religion. And so that's been my thing. But what I found interesting was how religion affects all of us, whether you're a believer or not, or regardless of what you believe in or don't believe in. Religion affects all of our lifestyle one way or the other. And so I found religion to be extremely interesting. I wrote a book about my experience in denouncing and leaving Christianity. And then I went back to school and got a degree in religious studies. And so now this is the work that I will be doing for the foreseeable future until I die, because I think that it is important. And so I saw other people that looked like me that did not have the privilege of being able to be out and open about their faith and their religion. And so this became it's became my purpose to create a safe space to let people know that we're out here. There are people who look like me that are not believers, who are free thinkers, who are humanists, who are just have questions about their religion. And so that's what I do. And so that's sort of the short version of it. Um, where are we here? Let me see.
So, well, Gloria.
Gloria. Okay, Gloria. Okay, Gloria.
The,
The secular Does secularism mean living life by your own terms and choices, which gives one power to do whatever they want? Gloria, uh, um, I'm going to ask you a question, but let me say this. I think it is a misnomer, and I'm not saying that you're doing this, but I've heard this from believers who say where you are a non-believer because you want to do what you want to do and you don't want to follow quote unquote God's law. I know more believers and more Christians who do a lot worse things than I have ever done, and as to what I do now. Um, I am and have been 100% faithful to my wife. I know Christian men who commit adultery, who cheat on their wives. Who I don't even drink. I'm not. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't gamble. I don't cheat on my wife. And many non-believers who I know are just like me. So we didn't become non-believers because we wanted to do what we wanted to do. We became non-believers because religion does not make sense to us, and there is not enough evidence to convince us to believe in a deity or a God. Simply put, um, but does it give us yeah, I am able to live my life on my terms, but my terms are better than most believers that I know. You know, what guides me is my humanity. You know, I don't cheat on my wife because I don't want to see my wife hurt. I don't want to mess up what my wife and I have built for 20 years, right? I don't smoke because I think it's bad for my body. I don't drink because I think it's bad for my body. I don't gamble because I don't like losing money. I don't murder, rape, and kill people because I don't want to hurt other human beings. And so forth and so on. So yeah, uh, let's see. Next question.
I think that's just a comment.
Okay, Henry said, "Thanks for the response. I love God, but also love secular music because it keeps me entertained whenever I'm down." That's a good point, and I think that's important, Henry. I think that's important. Uh, I think you people can listen to different types of music. So if you, for example, jazz. Let's take maybe rap or R&B out of the picture. What is wrong with if I'm a believer? What is wrong with me listening to jazz or classical music, right? And I don't have a problem with people listening to R&B or rap for that matter. But me, even as a non-believer, there is some rap music that I don't want to listen to because I think that it is destructive to my mind and to younger people, right? It has nothing to do with me being a believer or a non-believer. It has everything to do with what I think the music does. And I grew up in an environment as a kid where we listened to some really bad music, and I saw the influence that it had on some people. It didn't have that influence on everybody, but it had influence on some people. So yeah, so I appreciate that, Henry. That looks like all of the questions. George, we
Yes.
are at an hour and 41 minutes. So let me take the time to say this, George. George, I certainly appreciate this. Thank you so much. I had a great time. I think I had more fun than the students. Guys, I wish you all the best. Please reach out to me. Those of you uh, um, who are on this journey, who have questions about your faith or any faith, who are agnostic or who are atheists, or even if you are religious, please just continue that journey. Read everything you can read. Don't let anyone stop you from that journey. And if there are people out here who look just like you, who have the same questions and the same concerns that you have. And thank you guys so much for allowing me to do this class for you guys. And hopefully we can do more in the future. That's up to George, y'all. You guys got to talk to George.
Yeah, so really, that was a perfect engagement for the student. As you know, most of them probably they are into this kind of an engagement for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I think they have so many questions. I don't know, they'll be asking me so many questions. So I think that the next engagement, I'll be giving you feedback about the question they'll be asking, and I think in the next engagement, I will give you the question you respond to first before you tackle the next topic that we'll decide. I think that will be okay.
Yep.
So thank you so much. That was
Thank you.
very nice of you.